Andy, good morning. Welcome back to Fast Market. As always, we're talking about Etsy. I'm not sure it's one that you're on a lot, but maybe the wife looks at it. Hey, hang on, Andy. We'll get you back in just a second. We have a little bit of an audio problem while we're getting that set up here. Jenny, you may know a little bit more about Etsy than Kevin or I did. Do you want to set us up a little bit on what Etsy is and what they do while we're getting that figured out with Andy?
I would like to say this is when I might have a little bit more expertise than both of you. So
yes, let's put it this way, Jenny. The term hobbyist is not something that's said about me very often. I do not have a lot of hobbies that might
outside of golf
bring Etsy into play here.
That's okay. I mean, Etsy is basically an online retailer, but what's really special about them is they sell everything that is homemade. So they're going to have merchants that are online, these third-party sellers that are selling things that are homemade. It's really cool, actually, the way they distribute. It's more personal. Like, you can order something and it'll have a very personalized touch. So different than eBay and Amazon in the way that it's very personal. It's all custom made to you.
Question I have for you, how close is this to like a Pinterest? I know Pinterest is a little bit more of a social platform, but isn't it kind of geared towards this as well, a little bit more of like homemade
DIY, things? Yeah. So I would say that Pinterest is almost the before and Etsy is the after. So Pinterest is the idea, the concept, and then Etsy is the actual product that you can buy. So I mean, they do go hand in hand. I think that if you're into hobbies and DIY, you go on both apps, but it's a pretty cool concept because it's special to you, which I think is something they've done well in a time where the consumer it's all over the place.
Here's the thing that caught my eye, though. They help you, if you're like a little entrepreneur, they help you manage your business. They help you start it too. They're into that part of the business. They don't just say, well, bring your stuff to us and we'll help you sell it. They help you start to be an entrepreneur. I like that part.
And that is exactly what I saw on social media today. That's actually what my first tweet is about, because there's some mixed feelings about Etsy being so involved in these merchants. As you can imagine, Etsy obviously takes a stake of their sales. So that's kind of what the first tweet is. So our first tweet is from Gideon, who says, "Hey Etsy, the constant push for sellers to offer free shipping is really getting old. My shipping fees are not too expensive. This is less than what I'd pay at the post office, and I'm one person running an Etsy shop from my living room." So this is kind of the feedback I saw on social media today, where people are thinking Etsy is taking too much of a hand in their business, and to compete with companies like Amazon, that you have to offer that extra edge, because Amazon came out with their handmade section, which is, I think, going to be a huge problem for Etsy.
So I think we got Andy back now, so I want to pull in Andy Swan from LikeFolio.com, the co-founder. Andy, I'm not sure if you could hear us there, what Jenny is saying. From what I've gathered while we were getting that figured out is, Etsy's kind of like a boutique Amazon. And based off what this tweet's saying is their merchants are getting a little bit of pressure maybe to kind of do what Amazon's doing, which is that free shipping, the quick shipping. Am I crazy?
No, you're right, but I think what Etsy's doing is it's teaching its sellers how to run a business in a way that consumers like more. So Etsy's going out there and saying, this is what you need to do to compete. And some sellers may be pushing back on that, but consumers are loving it. We're seeing consumer happiness mentions on Etsy in terms of the LikeFolio data that we look at are up above 80% happy, which is unheard of in a retail space, and especially when you look at the purchase intent growth that the company is seeing. We're actually seeing Q1 purchase intent above where it was in Q4, their very important holiday season. That's really very rare for retailers. It's rare for Etsy. So we think that they're doing a very, very good job of making their customers happy, and the numbers speak for themselves. Look, habitual buyers on Etsy are outperforming new buyers. That means people who buy from the company repeatedly are doing so more and more as time goes on. And that, to me, says that Etsy's doing a good job of steering its sellers in the right direction.
And Andy, the only thing I have a question on then is how much do we have to factor in the stock performance on Etsy. It's up 41.5% year to date. It's up 110% over the trailing 12 months. I mean, this is a stock that's been not only liked by Wall Street, but loved. And I know your data looks good, but I'm just wondering, how is the stock out ahead of itself?
Yeah, that's where we're at too. We haven't on our Sunday earnings sheets. We didn't put out an official call on this one specifically for that reason. The stock has run up so much. The underlying business looks fantastic, but the stock has run up so much that it makes it a very difficult call going into earnings. And so we're looking at it more of a if-then type of situation. If we get a pullback in Etsy after earnings, if it somehow disappoints an extremely optimistic Wall Street, then we'll start looking at the stock from a longer-term perspective in terms of picking up shares, because the underlying business, fantastic.
One more quick question before we jump back to Jenny here, Andy. When I look at Etsy and I look at what I understand Pinterest to be and where their future could go in terms of how they can continue to monetize their user base, is Pinterest not a threat to Etsy as it kind of expands and turns its platform into more of a marketplace?
It could be. It could also be, Etsy could be one of the biggest beneficiaries of that. I think that, Pinterest, the demographics of a Pinterest user are right in line with an Etsy user. I think that the companies probably are more likely to work together, or even, I hate to throw out acquisition in there, but they're more likely to get together and work together than they are to compete against each other in a meaningful way. And I think that they boost each other in a really nice way. And I think that, probably Jenny could probably chime in on that, but I'm sure she's a pretty avid user of both.
I am.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about that, and you kind of mentioned that they're a little bit different. One's the before, one's the after. But in terms of stock price, I know your second tweet has a little bit more to do with actually how this stock's trading. And of course, that's what me and Kevin are going to have to take into account when we're looking at this in just a little bit.
Going into earnings, yes. So our next tweet says, Etsy forms a flat base as it consolidates after its recent earnings gap up. 16% gain on 7 times average volume. Reclaims its 10-week line after a brief undercut on low volume. Base is tighter than prior wide and loose bases. Watch for follow through and break above its descending trend line. So talking strictly based on the stock movement, they hit their record highs at around $73 in March. They're around the $70 level. Could we be seeing a price correction? I mean, could this move be, what could the move be going into earnings?
Well, here's the thing you got to look at. When a stock goes up and makes that all-time high, like you just saw, and then it consolidates, doesn't sell back down. Now, it's a little bit small, it's lower, it's $67, but I would call this more of a consolidation than didn't hold into its high, which tells me, it tells me it's pretty healthy up here. Even though the PE is a little high, it's not catastrophically high for a stock that's growing, especially when Andy's data says, everyone that uses Etsy seems to be pretty happy with the experience. So I think this chart, from a growth perspective, it looks really impressive.
Well, the one thing I want to pull Andy back in for too is, because I asked you, has the stock got ahead? And you basically said, it isn't one way or another. And to me, that tells me that it isn't necessarily ahead. It's just kind of in line with what your data is showing. And that makes me less concerned that the stock's up 110% year to date, because your data is showing that, maybe it should be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The company's performing very well. The stock is performing very well. Nothing seems completely out of whack here, which is, funny to say on a stock that's gone from $17 to $70, but the company is executing extremely well. There's a lot of open field in front of it. The consumers are happy. Pretty much a really good story going on for Etsy, and we expect that to continue.